What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Tattoo Critiques. If you're new here, my name is Pony Lawson, and I'm here to break down your tattoos. This week we're diving into our 10th installment dedicated solely to apprentice tattoos. There'll be highs, there'll be lows. But most importantly, there will be tips to help these up-and-coming artists along their journey. So without further ado, let the games begin! Alright, before we get started, if you could please hit that subscribe button. I noticed that less than half of you subscribe. What's up with that? It really does help the channel, and I would appreciate it so much. Alright, let's get started. Alright, the first tattoo is sent in by Barbara, and Barbara, you said you've been an apprentice for about 2 years. And right off the bat, this really isn't a bad tattoo whatsoever. I really do enjoy your spin on this reference, and I love the soft shading that you have throughout the body. I like how you used a smaller liner to keep all those finer details nice and sharp. And that's especially true when it comes to its fingers on the front. A lot of times we see those fingers get lost on the face because people are too afraid to use those smaller liners. Although I would have liked to have seen a little bit of that sharpness around the nose and eyes as well. You didn't do a bad job at all, but I expect when this thing heals, we're going to lose a little bit of that definition around that eye. As far as the rest of the outlines go, and that includes the outline around the hand, I'd say work on tightening those up just a bit, because they do get a little squirrely. But that's to be expected with where you're at in your journey. There are some outlines in the hair that just seem like they don't belong, especially when we look below that left horn. They just seem kind of out of place. I do think those lines in particular could have been a bit softer or lighter. If we look back toward the wing, I feel like that could have been a bit softer as well, just to kind of push it in the background a bit more. It just seems like you didn't put as much time in the wing as you did the rest of the tattoo. Now that could have been your goal by leaving some of those details out of the wing, but it just seems a bit dark, and it just draws our eyes to that wing instead of the rest of the face. It also looks like you added some shading to the top of that wing, whereas I would have added the shading to the background, just so it makes it look like that wing is catching light, just like the rest of the cherub. And just a quick note, if we look at that right horn, it doesn't look like it's quite attached to the cherub's head. It just seems like the angle is a bit off. Now if we look toward the center of the cherub's hair, it looks like there may have been a mole, or you forgot to add some shades. I'm gonna go with a mole. Now a lot of times we don't tattoo over moles, not only because it's harder to tattoo over and it doesn't hold a lot of detail, but if your dermatologist needs to check it out for cancer later, they're able to do so. Can't say the C word. And when we look down to the clouds that the cherub is leaning on, I can see that there's structure of clouds there, but they almost look like they're barely put in, and I fear that those are going to completely disappear when this thing heals. I would have just made those shades a hair darker, just so it survives the healing process. But other than that, like I said, I think you're right where you need to be, and this is a solid tattoo. So thank you so very much, Barbara, for sending that in and allowing me to take a peek. Alright, the next tattoo sent in is from Evan, and Evan, you sent in this little mace tattoo that you did on yourself. You also mentioned that you're 2 months into your apprenticeship, and I have to wonder if you're really an apprentice, because it doesn't really look like you had any guidance with this tattoo. Now I'm sure you are an apprentice, but I really think that your mentor should have been watching you like a hawk as you made this tattoo. Because, what the f***? It almost looks like an everlasting gobstopper sucker.
Did you say everlasting gobstoppers?
That's right.
None of these asterisks or stars really look similar, and I'm not really sure what's going on with the shading in the middle of this tattoo. It almost looks like you tried to lick it. It's not really a gobstopper. How many licks does it take till you get to the center of the... Please don't lick your tattoos. Alright, but for real, let's talk about these outlines. Let's talk about them. I really do wonder if your mentor was watching you here. And if they were watching you, then send in your boss's tattoos. It looks like you may have needed more time on paper or even fake skin before hitting real skin. Even if it is your own skin, doing tattoos like this are only going to ingrain bad habits. My suggestion for you would be to bust out that fake skin and get used to your machine and just run line after line after line. Get used to that muscle memory, because this tattoo genuinely looks like Ryan did this.
Hey!
See? I wasn't kidding.
I think mine's better.
But in all honesty, just keep practicing. Draw your ass off, tattoo fake skin, and take all the time you need, because that's only going to help you. Keep running those lines, because your lines shouldn't be that shaky, even for your first tattoo. But I do appreciate you having the balls to send me your first tattoo. Thank you so very much, Evan. Alright, the next tattoo sent in is from Errol. And Errol, you mentioned you've been an apprentice for 3 months. Just 1 month longer than the previous tattoo. What a f***ing difference. By looking at this tattoo, I can absolutely tell that there is somebody guiding you through this process. The lines are clean, and the shading is going in the right direction, and I like how you kept it true to traditional with the colors you chose. This is a great example of just focusing on the basics. And if you're an artist and you feel like you may be putting too much into your work, just remember the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Now, this isn't a perfect tattoo by any means, but if I were your mentor, I would be very happy with you as an apprentice. And if we look at that really long line on the back of the skull, starting at the jaw, working its way up all the way around to the cross, A lot of times those long lines are very difficult, even for full-time tattooers. And again, it may not be perfect, but it is pretty damn good, especially it being 3 months into the game. So Arrold, I think you're right on track with where you need to be. Keep up the good work, and hopefully I get to see some of your stuff in the future. Okay, real quick, I want to take a break to give a shout out to the sponsor of my channel, Mad Rabbit. All their tattoo projects just recently went vegan, which makes me so happy, and you can check out all they have to offer at madrabbit.com. Don't forget while you're there to use code PONY20 to get 20% off of your entire order. All right, let's get back into it. The next piece sent in is from Alex. And Alex, you mentioned you've been an apprentice for about 7 months, 3 on skin, 4 on actual people. And this just goes to show you how practicing on fake skin can really excel your artwork, because this thing is dope. And if I didn't know any better, I wouldn't know that you were an apprentice. You should definitely be pretty proud of this piece. Now, don't get all cocky running around the shop thinking you're ready to be a full-time tattooer, because this is just one tattoo. And although this thing is pretty dope, you still gotta put your time in. Don't be afraid to experiment with different styles, because although this may be your thing, you may unlock something that you didn't know about. But as far as this tattoo goes in particular, there are a lot of good things happening here. You've got some nice line work, some solid stipple shading, some pretty great areas of black, and even those outlines that make up the spiderweb in the background are pretty damn good. This piece shows me that you not only know how to lay down a solid tattoo, but you also know how to make some really unique artwork. You did mention in your email that the only mag shading you used in this tattoo was in the eye, and you'd like my opinion on that, but there really isn't enough going on for me to give you a solid critique. I guess the way that you did use it in there, it looks fine to me. There's really not much for me to say here. I wouldn't change a whole lot. I think you nailed it. Keep up the good work, Alex, and thank you so much for sending that in. All right, the next tattoos are sent in from Timothy. And Timothy, you sent me in a few upside down tattoos. And I guess that just shows me that if you can't even flip them the right way to send them to me, I just wonder about how much effort you're putting into your actual work. Unless, of course, this is how you're putting them on the body, which, if that's the case, let's take a look at this rose we've done so many times. I don't want to know what that rose smells like. They kind of look like beef lips. Now, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this rose because we've critiqued several roses just like this. And if you haven't seen the tutorial I've made, you can check it out here. But let's take a peek at these other upside down tattoos you sent in. Blowout City. All right, firstly, I don't think this bird's going anywhere. Not with a tail feather like that. If I'm being real, this bird needs a lot of help. And speaking of help, today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/TimothyTats. Yeah, all right, I'm just kidding. Not that kind of help. But I honestly think all these tattoos need a little help, and I don't think it's the help that I can give you in 3 minutes. You didn't mention how long you've been an apprentice, but I'm gonna tell you the same thing that I told Evan. And that's practice, practice, practice. Use those fake skins because that's what they're for. Even though they might not be like real skin, they definitely help you get used to that muscle memory. If I had a solid critique to give you, just get that line work dialed in 100% before stepping on to the next stage. Don't even touch shading at the moment, because it's very hard to hide bad line work with shading, especially as a beginner. And once you start pulling good lines, then start working on your shading, because you have to take the correct steps. And sometimes that involves taking a step back, learning the basics, getting those foundations down. And sometimes it takes people longer than others, and that's completely okay. That doesn't mean that your tattoos will be bad forever. But thank you so much, Timothy, for sending that in and allowing me to take a peek. And flip your f***ing photos. The next tattoo sent in is from River. Blow me down, River. And River, you sent in this butterfly tattoo that to me, it looks like it's lacking in its line work. This image looks good from a distance, but as we zoom in, I worry that those lighter areas are only going to fade away in the future. I know you're only 3 weeks in, and you may not be familiar with how these lighter tattoos heal. Lighter washed tattoos generally heal a lot lighter than they go in. So I fear that this thing's only going to fall apart as time goes on. But there is hope. I do think this thing is salvageable. If you get the opportunity to go back into this tattoo, I would definitely suggest to use some line work. Even if it's a thin gray wash outline around those wings, it's definitely going to stay a lot longer than what you have here. Another place we could use some solid outlines is around that body. This is going to help keep the shape of the butterfly's body and really showcase some good contrast, because as it sits, the shading in the body just feels too soft as well. And even when it comes to the stripes in the butterfly's wings, although you may not need it, not having those outlines everywhere else to me just seems like you're afraid of laying down solid lines. Another thing I noticed is the wings seem to overlap each other and they don't really attach to the body. To me, it kind of looks like a mistake, and again, that's something that could have been remedied with some outlines. And keep in mind, the more outlines that you use in the butterfly itself, the more soft shading you can get away with, especially when it comes to those shadows on the underside of those wings. Because right now, those shadows just look a bit too much like the shading that's happening in the wings, and they just make them look messy. I hate to keep harping on this tattoo because it does look good from afar, but chances are you are going to end up doing a lot of butterflies in your career. and I'm pretty sure they are still one of the more popular tattoos in the world. I think the faster you become confident with laying down those lines, the better these things are going to start coming out. Especially if you're trying to showcase the soft shading in those wings, the juxtaposition of having those crisp lines is only going to help that out. But River, don't take this the wrong way. This isn't a bad tattoo by any means. I have just seen millions of butterflies in my career, so I feel like I know what works and what doesn't work. But thank you so much for sending that in. Alright, that's going to wrap it up for the critiques, but I'd like to shine a spotlight on who I think sent in the best work this week. And I think you guys already know who I'm going to pick, and that's Alex Frona with this beautiful, crazy looking voodoo doll thing. Can we all give a round of applause to Alex for sending in one of the best apprentice tattoos I've seen in a long time. This thing is just a beautiful tattoo. From the original concept all the way to the execution, this thing has so many techniques here, and it looks like you've got great discipline. If you continue taking the time on your future tattoos like you did on this one, I can guarantee you're going to have a very successful career. So once again, thank you so much for sending that in, and congratulations on being my favorite this week. But wait, there's more. Before you guys click away, I want to show you guys a tattooer who I think you should all be following. And that tattooer is Dakota Herman out of Asbury Park, New Jersey. I often like to feature artists who correlate with what we've seen on the episode. And I think Dakota Herman does a great job of just that. Whether you want to tattoo black and white or full color pieces, I think her page is a great place to find inspiration. Her line work and color saturation are locked in. I'd say she uses that KISS principle pretty well. She keeps it simple and makes her tattoos look stupid good. And again, this is the foundation of all great tattoos. Even her color choices are a great example of what to be striving for. So please do yourself a favor, head on over to her page, give her a follow, and let her know I sent ya. Alright, now I promise, that's it. I want to thank all the artists who submitted their work this week. Please don't forget to subscribe, and as always, I will see you all next week.